Hi Kathy, it's Nick here, obviously, and I'm going to go through 34 Greenheys Road survey report, and we'll see what we see. So beforehand, I've already gone through the document beforehand, and I haven't seen anything particularly interesting or serious, which is good. There are some general condition issues, but this property is fundamentally very sound from what I see. But let's get into it and get into the detail. So the next thing is I'm going to just move that. There you go. And I'm going to go to single screen, and then I will go to comment and then highlight points of interest. The thing with the survey reports are they are often very long-winded, and therefore, you just get a lot of talk. Whilst the PDF viewer is sorting itself out, I have done, I've had another look in this as well. And the good thing about these 3D 360 walkthroughs is you get a very clear idea of what's going on without actually having to visit the property. And this is why I love these things, because they are pretty reliable. And as I'm sure I would have said originally, this property has had a very thorough renovation in its life. Probably in the 70s, I would have said. So it's a 1950s property. It's got the cheap laminate flooring here, etc. But without getting into the micro detail and condition, the main point is that all the ceilings are plasterboard, the walls are nicely done, the partition walls are probably plasterboard because they're nice and flat and smooth, and therefore I like this property from a condition point of view. Now the kitchen looks a bit so-so with all of this effect, but for me that's a kind of a non-issue. If I were renovating the property to new, or renovating the property and the tenants had vacated and I wanted to tidy everything up, there are a few things I would do. One is probably get another cooker, but saying that, these gas cookers are actually quite good and they're easy to work with and I quite like them. But what I would consider doing is just buying new carcass doors, which are pretty cheap. So for maybe £700, £800, that kind of thing, you could renovate the kitchen, make it, modernize it basically, and bring it up and improve all of the look and the feel of the thing with a relatively low cost. So, anyway, with that in mind, let's look at the survey report now that it's done its thing. So, what I'll do is I'll just go like page on like this. I'll scroll through it. In fact, I'll start at this level and then just kind of work my way through. And then I'll flag up any points of interest as I go through. Now, the survey reports always have this traffic light system, so they talk about roof structure, etc. So we're going to look carefully at most of this. But just to say, when they talk about gas, oil, electricity, etc., a lot of these alerts are just because they need a safety certificate. They won't necessarily have one. And therefore they say, well, if I don't have a certificate proving it's safe, then I say it's unsafe, if that makes sense. But all the things like chimney stacks, roof cover, all of this kind of stuff is all looking okay. And when it's an amber alert, generally for me, that means it's okay. Unless it's absolutely pristine, it won't get a one, as it were. And there are a few things like, yeah, removing some moss, some little bits and bobs, but nothing really serious as far as I can see. And right, so this is just general copy and paste discussion. So, for example, the thing about asbestos, I've seen that in loads of other reports. It's just they have like a body of content that they just copy and they paste. And a 1950s building, so as I said, I think by the style of the property, some of the doors and so on, it looks to me like it's early 80s or thereabouts renovation, which would kind of make sense. So after 30 years of being lived in, it was then renovated. And then we have EPC stuff, and we have pictures. Now, the thing about these survey reports are they're very useful when I'm doing detailed assessments of properties for renovation, for example, because you get a lot of little detailed things, which is good. Local environment, we've already assessed that in the overall assessment because we always do a flood check, a noise check, etc. Not a noise pollution check, but you know what? Noise pollution is very easy to work out. Is there a motorway? Is there a railway? No, then there shouldn't be any serious noise pollution. Chimney stacks. So he's saying that it's upright and in reasonably good order, and it looks to be so. The good thing about these 1950s houses is that the quality of the bricks was generally quite good, and technology had improved, so cement quality was better, and this is all good. So he's saying something about, yeah, mortar on the chimney stack maybe needing to be redone. But as far as I can see, I don't think it's that serious, and he hasn't marked it as a number one, number three, i.e., the thing isn't due to collapse or anything. Also, because it's a more modern property, it only has one chimney flue. It's designed for not having fireplaces, unlike Victorian houses. So that's just a good thing generally. And that flue will be used for the central heating boiler and so on. And moss and roof tiles. Yes, there is possibly some, but it's not really an issue. The other thing about, so the lean-to has some gunk on it, and that can be scrubbed off. Not a problem. It's a relatively easy thing to do. These concrete tiles, they are susceptible to accumulation of moss. But overall, I wouldn't say moss is a serious problem on these roofs. And therefore, I just don't see it as a serious issue, honestly. And the only downer is that you can get moss building up in the gutters, so therefore it is worth getting up there with a ladder every so often and clearing the gutters of gunk, basically. But the issue is if you want to clean the roof, you have to get onto the roof. You get onto the roof, you're putting weight on things, and then you crack slates and all this. And therefore, in my view, it's better just to leave everything alone. Now, the other good thing is being concrete tiles, they're very easy to replace, unlike slates. So they're not fixed in with a nail. You literally lift the tile up, slot another one in. That's why I like these tiles. They don't look beautiful, but they're very easy to maintain. And then he talks about gutters, and to me the gutters all look okay. No real issues. The fascia board, yeah, it could do with a bit of a cleanup, but it's basically okay. It's not exposed to the weather underneath there. Could do with a paint and redecorate at some point in the future, as long as it doesn't start rotting, and it's unlikely to. The fascia board on the side could do with some painting and decorating, but again, it's not an immediately necessary thing. Same with the windowsill here. Yes, you would do that, but you don't have to do that right now. So the next thing is he talks about wall ties, potential issues, doesn't see any. Now this is where, well, in fact, when I see a picture of it, because they always have a picture of these things, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now the other thing that's interesting is that you've got a proper damp-proof course, therefore there's very low likelihood of the property being damp. In other words, it was built with some building technology, as it were. A little bit of fascia boarding needs a bit of work. If there are hairline cracks, it's not a problem. It's when it's a big subsidence crack that's an issue. This isn't an issue. And he hasn't flagged it up as an issue, which is good. The reason you get a survey report is to pick up these kind of issues. And if the surveyor is saying, well, there's some cracks, it's not really a problem. So this is good. What you're looking for is subsidence where there is movement and there's progressive movement, and then you know you've got a problem. But this isn't that issue. And some stuff about that front elevation. So things like windowsills, fascia boards, they need some painting and decorating. But it's one of those things where when you need to do the renovation, eventually that's when you do it. Now here's the picture with the cable ties, and the way it works is you have two walls here, cavity wall, and then you have these things which essentially hold the two pieces of wall together. And in old houses they rot because they weren't galvanized, and on gables, i.e. the sides of the building, sometimes if they rot and there's a storm, then the whole lot can collapse. So up here, for example, because this brick won't be fixed into the roof, and this is just prone to collapse. And in fact, Joe, who I work with on the building side, had exactly this happen to one of his tradespeople. The eaves of a building collapsed and fell on his car. Bit heavy going. But anyway, that's why surveyors pay attention to these things. But this shouldn't be an issue because, again, 1950s, it's just better technology. And generally speaking, a more modern property is a better thing. So he's talking about UPVC. I think a couple of these windows don't open. But the good thing is that there's no condensation between the window panes. That's great. It means that you don't have to deal with replacing window panes. It's not a huge problem in itself. It's just hassle if you have to do it. And you don't have to do it. So far, this is all shaping up okay. This windowsill, like I said, the windowsills do need a bit of attention. Again, it's not an especially urgent job. It's just something that needs doing at some point. And then we've got this conservatory, which honestly doesn't really work well. And if one was doing a really thorough renovation, I think this conservatory would have to go. And you'd either build a proper extension, get rid of all of this, just make it open. So you've got a lovely open space with the living room. In fact, let's just go back here and we can have a look here. So you've got this living area here. It would be so much nicer if that was a proper extension. Get rid of all of this, and then you could have a dining room out there or dining room here and a lovely kind of living room area here, which would be thermally efficient. But right now, this is unused space. It's effectively redundant, and it's just one of those things. It often happens where people optimistically think, let's just add more space and it'll be wonderful. No, not necessarily. It has to be well thought out. Anyway, he's got the damp meter here, and the way this works is that there are LED lights. Red means there's a lot of moisture, green means very little, in the middle is just fine. And anywhere kind of around this middling area, it's okay. What's not okay is if you get moisture readings right at the top. So anyway, let's move on. Rather unpleasant flooring in the conservatory. And we've got a gutter here. The woodwork looks okay, which is good. It's just not a very good conservatory, that's all. Here they've got a cover for the gutter, which is a good thing. And they've got some sort of recess for this outpipe. So that's good. I don't know whether this is damp-proofed or not. I assume it is, but I'm not sure. Overall, this extension is not a great addition. I assume it is damp-proofed, but it's just not great. This feels to me like a 1970s or probably early 80s extension. And in fact, could be improved dramatically by redoing the ceiling so you can get thicker polycarbonate materials which are less transparent. That are more heat efficient. So with not that much cost, you could probably renovate this whole thing, replace all the glass with something much more heat efficient, make this transparent, and then you've got something that's actually usable and nice. Probably about £3,000 to do that. Now moving on, inside the property and roof structure. Now I'm quite curious about this. So he says it's got felt, that's good. And it's got lots of insulation inside. I'm just not clear where he's concerned about the roof structure. So, um, he says there's no vented soffits. Okay, so maybe that's the issue. And right, okay. So I think he's talking about the right, okay. The issue here is the lack of separating wall between this property and the neighbour, and it's a fire risk. But it's a very common issue, and therefore I don't really rate it as a serious issue, um, because mortgage providers will issue mortgages on properties like this if you have a secure roof loft latch. Then you're not going to get people coming through from next door. I don't really rate this as a serious problem, and I've seen this numerous times. Originally I used to, but then I did my research into all of this and I concluded that it's not really an issue to speak of. Now, um, peeling wallpaper, okay, just yeah. And as I said, what I would do is put locks on the latch, on the loft hatch, and there are already a couple of lofts. There's one there, and maybe I'd just have a better lock. But that solves the security problem. This is a very 1970s look, I've got to say, or even earlier. Maybe it's original build, in fact. It probably is original build, where you have this opaque glass with the kind of textured patterns. Anyway, it's okay. I don't love it. It's okay. But this property is fundamentally solid, which is very good because an awful lot of properties aren't. And if you own a property that isn't fundamentally sound, then it's a nightmare. This property, it's holding up nicely. The damp proofing is good. Everything's very dry. This is good news. And what have we got here? Bedrooms, and he's doing his various tests, even around here. So this is classic where you get damp down at the bottom of the wall where the air is cooler. Wall can't dry off as easily. No damp. Some cracks here. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. It's a hairline crack. It can be tidied up. And the surveyor isn't concerned either, because if they were, they'd put a red on it. They'd put a red notice saying, well, it's a problem. It's not a problem. And here we have the kitchen. Nice kitchen. And I like the way that you've got the kitchen diner area here together. I don't particularly like the style of this, but each to their own. And it's good how you can get a double height fridge in here. There's enough space for everything, which is good. This is original with the property, I expect. So this tells me it's late 50s, early 60s. And again, the newer the property, generally the better the build. Not always, but generally, especially with old ex-local authority, funnily enough. They were generally very well built in the 60s, and in the 70s, not so well built. So it's a good time for ex-local authority houses. Carpet looks good. You can see what I mean by that is it's got a bit of underlay in it and it looks fine. And it's just a nice, bright little house, I would say. And some storage. The bathroom, everything looks okay. These damp proof readings are important. No damp, but there wouldn't be any damp because it was properly built in the first place. And going through this, what's he saying? Into condition, he's just kind of talking about stuff in general. This basin is unusual. It's fine, I suppose, if people like living with it, it's okay. Okay, what have we got? Woodwork, what's he saying? Okay, so the staircase might be an issue here, and no creaking, well, a little bit. Okay, that's fine. And okay, that's interesting. So he's talking about a lack of handrail So this is another classic surveyor red flag thing. Again, because this property was built a while ago, building regulations have changed, and one of the regulations is the height of the handrail. And it's a little bit too low and it needs to be raised to meet building regs. But the way building regulations work is it's all done on it's all based on if you change it, then you must update it. So if you had to remodel the stairs, for example, and you had to take out this, then you would have to reinstall correctly. But it's fine. If you leave it alone, you don't have to touch it. And it's not a health and safety issue as such. So therefore, to me, it's a non-issue. And very 1960s, early 60s kind of doors here. New doors put in retrospectively, panel doors. I don't like them, but they're okay. They're not to my taste, but they're okay. Bathroom fittings, everything's looking all right. That's good. It's quite an old bathroom suite and an old bath. Probably 1970s, I guess. The reason this would have been retrofitted is because fiberglass, which is what this is made of, gel and fiberglass, it came into popularity in the 70s. So it was kind of mass produced by then. And that's why you see that pre that it would have been a metal bath, which was enameled, not so pleasant. This is probably a 1980s bathroom with a power shower, which are okay, not great. And electricity, so he's saying there's no certificate, so how does he know it's safe? Therefore, he gives it a red. But that's a pretty nice looking consumer unit and relatively modern with RCDs and so on. So that looks good to me. Fairly modern-ish gas meter. It's fine, it's just a gas meter. And got a stopcock, as in you turn that off, that stops the water into the main house. So if you have a busted pipe or something, turn it off there, stop the leak. And we have a boiler. I'm not sure where that boiler is situated. I want to find out because I think it's quite important we know. And the boiler is in the kitchen where it should be. So that's excellent. And that's good. Okay, I'm pleased about that. It's the right place. I'm sure I would have flagged that up in a previous assessment. And we've got a combo boiler. That's good. So this is a relatively modern boiler. I would say it's probably 10 years old or something like that. And it's good. So what else? We've got decent drainage and everything seems to be in good order from that point of view. And we're nearly there. What does it say about the grounds? Limitations of inspection, garage. No, we've got a timber shed. That looks like it's in decent condition. The felt roofing will probably go in a few more years, but it's cheap to replace. It's just one of those jobs to do. And it's already got a bit of a leak because you can see the grey there. So that probably needs changing at some point in the reasonably near future, like in the next year or two. And looking at the front, now if you were renovating this property, one little trick that really makes it pop, as it were, is to jet wash all the concrete, the fence panels, and it just gives it that new look. All this paving, just jet wash it, bring it up, make it nice and new looking. You're good to go. Now this cement needs redoing, just a bit of landscaping work. And again, clean all the fence panels, clean all this, do something about this. It's just poor presentation, but it's not fundamental to the property, so that's okay. And it's reasonably well looked after. And then we have right, okay, so then you get the rest of the verbiage, which is just stuff to do with risks and this and that and the other. Okay, now let's just see. I'm just curious to see if they did a valuation. I assume there's a valuation. Yes, let's have a look. And I'm nearly there. Whoops. Okay. Maybe they didn't do a valuation on this. That's fine. Martin is really good at these, and he we would have done the valuation anyway. So in any event, if you're getting it mortgaged, you need to do mortgage valuation, and that gives you your numbers. But from what I remember, this is a nicely acquired property. It was the right kind of money, and it's a nice property in a very high growth, high capital growth area. And yeah, I'm just doing a quick read through. Yeah, I think this is all very sound. And overall, I'll just go back to full screen, just give you my final assessment. Yeah, I like this property. I always have. I think it's well built. It's in a nice, quiet location. The surveyor seems to think it's okay. It's checked out reasonably well. There are a few minor little bits and bobs here that need sorting out, but it's a nicely laid out property and in reasonable condition. So that's good. All right, I hope this review was helpful. Thank you.